Isn't it funny? I'm sure this isn't lost on you. Every time we see images of the Queen, whether it's some of what we've just seen in that little piece that the King voiced, or whether it's a photograph in a newspaper, there's a moment, isn't there? There's a moment where it captures you. You go, wow, the Queen, yes, the Queen. She was here for so long. She was. It's almost like we need another word for familiar. It's within our DNA. It's a visceral thing when we see pictures of the late Queen.
It just feels normal, but we know she's no longer with us, so we're seeing them as if, look, I'm into my 60s. I've known nothing else but her being on the throne until last year, and I think that applies to great swathes of the population. And so that the images that we've seen, she was, you know, part and parcel of our life, and it's still trying to sever that link and actually get used to the fact that we now have a king as our head of state. And that's been the interesting transition of how he's had to try and manage that. And I think that the tone of what he said, you just played a clip of there, was actually to serve us all. And you know, and that's what he realizes he has to do, is to create that same feeling, that same bond. Although she was able to build that bond over 70 years, it wasn't always plain sailing. There were at times when there was a lack of confidence in the royal family. We think back to the 90s and some other stages. It wasn't always straightforward, but in the main, and we know the way it ended, a great deal of affection, the way she kept the family, you know, trying to fulfill her role right to the end. You think 2 days before she died, there she was in Balmoral, fulfilling her duty as the head of state to greet the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, at that time. And you think, well, what's happened in the time that time? Wow, things have been the most extraordinary year. Plus, we've had the coronation, and then we move on now. And now this sort of bookends this first year, and perhaps now it's time to really enter the Carolean era, and with King Charles, and he can start to further sort of pave the way for his style of monarchy, which he knows is only going to be a short tenancy until his son takes over, and he needs to make sure that it's a monarchy for all, and that's what he's got to try and do.
Can he do it though, Rupert? I'm not so sure. You know, I wonder whether, you know, every now and again there are things in life that you can't put your finger on it. You can't necessarily find the right words. I was scraping away when I introduced you to describe those moments, those senses, those instinctive feelings we get when we see the Queen. You can't make that happen. It just happened, perhaps by dint of the fact that she was there and has been around for, you know, anyone alive today has only known the Queen. Well, there might be a few exceptions, but very few. So you can't design that kind of atmosphere. It's like trying to build an atmosphere. It's either there or it's not.
Yeah, he knows that that's the issue. And they would have been discussing how they want the monarchy to look in times since the death of the Queen. They would have been preparing it and discussing how do we manage to build that sort of warmth, the natural warmth. But we do know that people who come into contact and working with the Prince's Trust have the utmost respect and admiration for him. And so there is a lot of good there. It's just how it brings out to people to understand, you know, that there aren't the Pengate issues ever, you know, that actually he can be seen in a true and positive light. But really what he wants to be is a steady hand on the tiller to ensure that when his son takes over, of course, you know, whenever that will be, there is a monarchy fit for purpose in a modern era, and he has to bring along the younger generation who may say, well, what is the point of the monarchy? And they've got to understand what that point is. What is the monarchy about? Which is actually supposed to be a unifying force for the country, aside from all the political stuff that goes on. The politics is irrelevant. The monarchy is the centre point, and that's what people have got to understand, and that's what the monarchy has to ensure that the British public understand. Otherwise, their institution may fail.
And it is that younger age group, isn't it, Rupert? I know there's always been a disproportionate amount of younger people that will answer that kind of question. You know, I'm not really in favour of the monarchy, or I don't understand it, or what's the purpose, etc. And then it's often said, you know, as those people get older, they slightly change. But there does seem to be a worrying number of young people who are just not getting the whole kind of Charles and Camilla thing. Don't really have any way of identifying with those people as individuals or the purpose of royalty.
Well, there is a disconnect. You know, look at the lifestyles. You know, however hard they try, they do lead a gilded lifestyle. You can't ignore that fact. Yet it behoves them to actually make sure that those people less fortunate, let's be honest, that is 99% of the population, have to actually feel that there is a merit. Now, that's why it was very important for yesterday for the Prince of Wales to be seen involved in his homeless charity. He's passionate about that. And that is a way that he feels that he can make the institution relevant. Aside from all the politics, just actually get on and do stuff that is proactive and helpful. And people actually say, yes, I get what he's trying to do. It's aside from all the political stuff, and there's no taking sides, just doing good stuff. And that's what the object of yesterday and his Homewood initiative is all about. So that's what he has to do. It might be harder for the King to do naturally, bearing in mind he's in his 70s, but people who know and have worked with him in the Prince's Trust know how respected he is. So I think it is difficult, and yet today you can see great numbers of people have been going to Buckingham Palace, have been paying their respects. So there's plenty of life in the monarchy as an institution, but they must never take it for granted.
There it is, Rupert. Sound words to finish on.